Good morning. If you would, open your Bibles to the book of Mark, chapter 4. Mark, chapter 4, that's where we're going to be beginning our lesson this morning. Sure is good to see everybody out this morning. I saw a post on Facebook. It's deer season will begin this week. Big deal in my household. But I saw a post on Facebook, some deer hunting group. And it said, "Yeah, I know the deer are running. I know there's other things that you could be doing, and a lot of things the world's gonna do. But where you need to be is in the house of the Lord." And they were right. I don't know who it was that wrote that was in that post this morning. I understand there's lots of things that people could be doing, but the fact that you chose to be here this morning to sing songs of praise His name, to talk to God, created the universe through the avenue of prayer, and to study about Him through the Scriptures, I appreciate that, and you're to be commended for that. There are lots of times in our life that things don't go right, do they? Things that will cause us to be discouraged. People will say something, and when things go that way in our life, it can make us lose our faith and ask the question, do you even care to God? Do you even care? Now, that might seem like a silly question. But when you look at the Scriptures, Jesus Himself was asked that. Do you even care? Especially when we think about, and we're going to get into this more in the lesson, but when we think about Jesus and who He is and what He did, that He is the Son of God. You realize that, right? That He's the Son of God, had all the splendors of heaven, and yet He sees sinful man, because God and sin can't coexist, can they? And because of that, man needs redemption. We talked about that in our Bible class this morning. Man needed to be bought back. And so He comes to earth to die for me and for you, so that we can be bought back, so we can be redeemed. Yet when the most inconvenient thing happens, we ask, do you even care? So in our lesson this morning, I want us to go through some different examples where people in the Bible literally said that or had that attitude, and how we can apply that in our life so that when things go wrong in our life, we can know that we do have a God who cares. Because He cared so much that He sent His Son to die on the cross for us, right? So in Mark chapter 4 is where we're going to begin our lesson. Mark chapter 4, it had been a long day in Mark chapter 4, as where he had been doing all the different parables. In the beginning of chapter 4, we see Him doing the parable of the sowers, parable of the sower and the soils. We see the parable of the mustard seed, and at the verse 35 of chapter 4, it says, "On that day," and I'll be reading from the New American Standard Version. "On that day, when evening came, He said to them, 'Let us go to the other side.' Leaving the crowd, He took along with them in the boat just as He was, and the other boats were with Him. And there arose a fierce gale of wind, and the waves were breaking over the boat so much that the boat was already filling up. And Jesus Himself was in the stern, asleep on the cushion, and they woke Him, and they said to Him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' And He got up and rebuked the wind and said, 'Hush, be still.' And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. And He said to them, 'Why are you afraid? How is it that you have no faith?' They became very much afraid and said to one another, 'Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obeys Him?'" Now, I think it's interesting that when you think about these apostles that are riding in this boat with Him, they had seen Jesus perform miracles, right? They had seen Him do things that were supernatural, things that man can't do. They believed Him to be the Son of God. And when you think about what we talked about at the beginning of Jesus leaving the splendors of heaven and then coming down and given himself to be a man. And Jesus, he's tired. He had preached all day. And I know preaching don't seem like it's a tiresome thing, but when you get up, if you've ever done any type of public speaking and you've got to prepare for it, and you're trying to do your best job, even if you're the Son of God, it can be tiring. I'm obviously not, and this can get tiring for me. Sunday afternoon, I'm ready to take a nap. Especially when you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go deer hunting, Billy. Yet, when the storm comes, their faith is shaken. And what do they say in verse 38? Do you even care? Do you even care? Because of this, there was fear in the boat. They were scared for their life. They were scared that because of what had happened, of the storm coming up, they had the concern of, well, he's the Son of God. We've been on this lake, or the Sea of Galilee. We've been on it several times. We've seen shipwrecks. We know people that have been shipwrecked. And here's Jesus, and he's asleep. Do you even care about our life? Hey, buddy, wake up. What are you doing? What does Jesus do? Well, he exposes the storm's weakness and exposes who he really is, the master of the elements. When he gets up off that cushion and he says, "Peace, be still." You want to live? You ask if I care about you? I'm going to deliver you from the storm. Think about our lives. Not everything is going to be perfect. Not everything is going to be a bed of roses. There will come times in our lives that storms will come. Times when we will be discouraged. Times when our faith in following Him can be shaken. I think we've all went through that at some point in our life. Of, why am I doing this? I have done my best to follow Him. Does He even care about me? Out of all the things I've done in the past. It's easy to think like that sometimes, isn't it? But if we stop and pause and quit thinking about ourselves sometimes, that's a lot of our problems, isn't it? Selfishness, self-pity. It's easy to have a pity party on ourselves. But when we think about who we serve and what He has done for us, we realize that there is no storm that we can endure that God can't overtake. When you look back at the book of Psalm, in Psalm chapter 120 or 107, Psalm 107 and verse 28, it says, "Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and He brought them out of their distress. He caused the storm to be still, so that the waves of the sea were hushed, and they were glad when they were quiet. And He guided them to their desired haven." To their desired haven. You know, a lot of times, it's simply our faith isn't what it should be. Because God will be with us in any storm. It's easy for us to consider, well, you know, I just can't take it anymore. Life's unfair. But when we think about what it says in Isaiah chapter 43 and verse 2, it says, "When you pass through waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they will not overflow you. And when you walk through fire, you will not be scorched, nor will the flame burn you. For I am the Lord your God." That's who we serve. That's who we serve. That's the God that can deliver us. But I promise you, there is no experience in life that when you think that it can overtake you, there's no experience in life that God can't guide you through it. Remember what it said back there in the book of Psalm? It said that He will guide you to your safe haven. Let me tell you, there's only one safe haven, and that's in the arms of Jesus Christ. And the only way to get in the arms of Jesus is to follow His teachings, follow His example, live as a Christian does or should. and have a home with Him in heaven. That's the only time true rest is going to come, isn't it, Tracy? Yet we'll ask, do you even care? Of course He cares. Of course He loves us. When we think about, that it's not the only time that question has been asked. In the book of John in the New Testament, turn there with me, in John chapter 11. In John chapter 11. John chapter 11 and verse 1, excuse me. John chapter 11 verse 1, it says, Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was the Mary who appointed the Lord with an ointment, wiped His feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sister sent word to Him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. But when Jesus heard this, He said, This sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when He heard that he was sick, He then stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Well, if we go on, verse 20, we see that he's died, that Lazarus has died. Because in verse 11 it says, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. But in verse 20, Martha goes to meet him. She heard that Jesus was coming. And Martha said to Jesus, Lord, had you been here with me, my brother would not have died. Now notice what they had said in the first 6 verses. It says, this one whom you love. He had a different relationship with them, didn't he? He cared for them. And yet when she sees that he's coming, she says, if you'd been here, he would have lived. If you'd been, because they've seen his power. Do you not care that he's died? Do you even care? But what does Jesus say? In verse 25, he says, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. This pained Jesus to see his friends like this. Thankfully, I've never lost a sibling. I know some of y'all have. But I've lost grandparents. I've lost friends. That's not a pleasant experience, is it? Or if you know of somebody that has lost somebody that was dear to them, you can hurt for them. They might not be your blood kin, but you can hurt with them, can't you? What do we see that Jesus does in verse 36, 35, shortest verse in the Bible? Jesus weeps. Jesus cries. Why? Because he cares. Because he sees the pain that his friends are in. And what do we see him end up doing? He ends up raising Lazarus. He ends up raising Lazarus from the dead. But he cares for us regardless of what the situation is, regardless of what sickness or whatever comes our way. We have to keep in mind what's wrote in the book of Romans. In Romans chapter 8, in verse 28, it says, And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God and who are called according to his purpose. You know, we might not understand why certain things happen. And a lot of times it's not for us to understand, is it? But what we have to know is, and what we have to rely on is that God cares for me. That yes, things might get rocky in our life. A storm might come in our life. Yes, we might have a spouse die, child die, friend die. But one thing's for certain, he loves us and he wants to care for us and he will care for us. In John chapter 11 and verse 40, what does he say? He says, Jesus says, and this is in the same story of what we're just reading from, it says, Jesus said to her, "Did I not say that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" What did he do? He made Lazarus rise from the dead. Why? Well, for one, to show the power that he was who he said he was, and two, because he cared. That's a God that we serve. I think a lot of times that we forget that we're so consumed in ourselves, that we're so consumed in what I want, what I think is best. Yet we serve a God that cares, that looks at the bigger picture and knows what I need, knows what you need. And He cares so much that He gives us what we need, when we need it, how we need it. That's the God I want to serve. That's the God I need to serve. That's the God that deserves serving because He does care so much. And you know, Elijah. We'll get to David in a second. Elijah wasn't alone in this. When you look at Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19, turn there with me. In 1 Kings chapter 19, in verse 1. Now, and to keep in context, Elijah had just had a huge victory at Mount Carmel. Remember what had happened there? Fire fell down from heaven, and he proved that God was God and not Baal. Right? But in verse 1 of chapter 19, it says, "Now Ahab told Jezebel," which is his wife, of course, "all that Elijah had done, and how he had put the prophets of Baal to death with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, So may the gods do to me, and even more, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And he was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey to the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for them that he might die. Oh, is it not enough now, O Lord? Take my life, for I am not better than my fathers. And he lay down and slept under a juniper tree. And behold, there was an angel touching him, and he said to him, Arise, eat. And he looked, and behold, and he had at his head a bread cake baked on stones, and a jar of water, and he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, Arise, eat, because the journey is too great for you. And he arose and drank and went in strength of that of 40 days, of that of food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. Focus in on verse 3 there. He was afraid for his life. Think about what he had just done. And proven the power of God, through God, of course. And showing them that Baal is just a graven image, just a god of the Canaanites. And yet the first lady, the queen, right? She comes, she says, well, you know what? You might have killed them prophets, but I'm going to make you be the same as them, dead in 24 hours. Now, if you've got the strength of the Israel army following you, trying to kill you, assassins or whoever, it could make you think of, well, look what I just did on the behalf of God. Do you even care about me? I'm having to go hide in the wilderness. What does he say there? What does he say there in verse 4? He said, It is enough now, O Lord, take my life. I want to end it all. I can't take it anymore. What does God do? He proves to him that he cares. Because if he didn't care, he would have allowed what to happen? Exactly what Jezebel said, right? But because he did care, because he did love Elijah, because he did see Elijah as a prophet of his, as a faithful follower of his, what does he do? He provides for him. He gives him strength. I don't know about you, but I need strength from God. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Being a preacher and working at Drake's and doing all that together is not easy. I gladly do it, but it's not easy. There are days when I feel down. There are days when I feel discouraged. I'm no different than anybody else. I put on my britches the same as anybody. But I promise you, I could not do what I do as a Christian without the strength of the Lord. If Elijah couldn't do it without the strength of the Lord, Caleb Smithson can't do it. Can we agree with that? Roger can't do it. Kevin can't do it. Brett can't do it. Why? Because we are human. But I serve a God that cares for me, that I don't have to question and say, do you even care? Because I know, I've seen it in my life, that God cares for me. That He cares for my family. That He has protected my family. That He has helped give strength to my family. Because He does care. Are things always going to be easy in life? Absolutely not. But we serve a God that does care. When we think about what's said in the book of Matthew, in Matthew chapter 11, we all know this verse very well. In Matthew chapter 11 and verse 28, He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest in your soul, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." If you follow me, that's what Jesus is saying there. If you follow me, I will take care of you. Do we fail to do that sometimes? I do. I fail every single day. Yet I've got to buckle up and say, because I serve a God who does care, because I serve a God that does love me, I want to come to Him. Because you know what? I'm weary and I'm heavy laden. And if I want to get to heaven, there's only going to be one way. He says it right there. Come to Him. So if you're here this morning and you haven't been baptized for the remission of your sins, you haven't come to Him. You want to serve a God that cares? That's how you do it. We'll get more to that here in a little bit, but that's how you do it. You want to serve a God who cares? You got to serve Him. You want a God that protects you? You want a God that strengthens you? Serve Him. Do what He said. For those that are Christians, it's easy to start your life, and when you come out of the grave of baptism and say, "Boy, I'm a new man," and then forget about Him. It's not a one and done thing, is it? It's every single day. Is it going to be easy? No. But because I serve a God who cares, that doesn't matter what stage of my life that I'm in, that there's one thing that's constant, and that's Him. Doesn't matter who's in the White House, doesn't matter who's in the governor's mansion. What matters is that He reigns. That He's the one that I serve. Because He cares. That's the God that we serve. You know, even David, man after God's own heart, he had laments. In Psalm chapter 13, way back at the beginning, Psalm chapter 13, In verse 1, he says, How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart all day? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord, my God. Enlighten my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him. And my adversaries will rejoice when I am shaken. But I have trusted your loving kindness. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. You know, at the first three verses there, he's more or less saying, do you even care? Think about what David, prior to him taking the throne, had went to. He has the current king, Saul, which is his best friend's dad, by the way, chasing him and trying to pursue him. He's hiding in caves. He had been anointed, but he's not being treated as the king. He's a fugitive. The king's trying to kill him. And just as what we see in verse 4, the enemy would have rejoiced. But what's the difference? So it's verse 5. He says, I, speaking of David, have trusted your loving kindness. Our loving kindness. You know, when we think about trusting in Him, it reminds me of what we read in the book of Habakkuk. You know, I did a sermon several weeks ago from the book of Habakkuk. In Habakkuk chapter 17, it says, Though the fig tree should not blossom, and there be no fruit on the vines, though the yield of the olive should fail, and the fields produce no food, though the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no cattle in the stall, yet I will exult in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. You ever feel like there's no fruit on the vine? Me and Dragos felt like that. When the dry weather came and the beans weren't making nothing, there wasn't much fruit on the vine, I'll tell you. Is it discouraging? Yep. It's even more discouraging when you sell them a month too early, Drago. That happened to me. It can be pretty discouraging. When the bank account ain't got in it what it should, that's more or less what he's saying. When there's no cattle in the stalls, it can be pretty discouraging. Because what's still going to come? That WRC seal bill is going to come. You might be able to shut off Netflix, but if you're wanting to stay warm, you got to pay that electric bill, don't you? Can it be discouraging? Yeah. But we serve a God who cares. That cares about you, that cares about me. And that even though things might get tough, even though things might be real, we serve a God that cares for us. And in closing, Jesus even made a similar cry. In Mark chapter 15, where Jesus is nearing the end of his life. Mark chapter 15 and verse 33, we find Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Mark chapter 15 and verse 33. We see it before this is where he's on the cross. In Mark chapter 15 and verse 33, he says, Jesus, the 6th hour came and darkness fell over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, he cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is translated, my God, why have you forsaken me? Do you even care? I'm your son. I'm on the cross. Remember what he had said in the Garden of Gethsemane? That's where I was going to. He said, if possible, let this cup pass from me. But what? Not my will, but thy will. Darkness had covered the land. Jesus is in pain. And yet, because we serve a God who cares, He allowed His Son. He allowed the Son of God. And Jesus Himself allowed Himself to undergo that horrible death. Because I think a lot of times we forget what Jesus could have done. Jesus could have said, "Oh, that's it." What would have happened? The angels come in, taking Him off the cross, and we'd be doomed. But what we see in 1 Peter chapter 5, he says, "Therefore humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you at the proper time, casting all your anxiety on Him." Why? Because He cares for you. Things are going to be difficult in life. Everything's not a bed of roses. But when you have doubt and you think, does He even care? Peter says He does. And He cares for you so much that He did undergo death on the cross, that He did undergo all those terrible things because He loves you and for some reason wants me and you to be in heaven with Him. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? That's really amazing considering I know what I've done in my life. I know how sorry of a person I've been and sorry of the things that I've done. Yet, as Peter says, He cares for me. And because of that, after what He suffered there in Mark chapter 15, He dies. But the good news is, in 3 days He rises, overcoming death for me and for you. So when we ask the question, do you even care? Absolutely. Absolutely He cares for you. If you're here this morning and you've never come to Him in repentance, now's the time to come to the one who cares for you. It all begins by giving your life to Him. By saying, I can't do it alone. I believe that He is the Christ, the Son of God. And because of that, I want to repent. I want to stop living for myself and start living for Him and confess that He is who He says He is. And then come to Him in baptism by having the old man washed away, the new man rise up, and live for Him faithfully. Why? Because He cares for you. Maybe you're here this morning and you've done that in the past, but you haven't been living like you should. Follow the one that cares for you. Live for the one that cares for you. Because He loves you and wants to be with you. If there's any need for salvation this morning, come forward as we stand and sing the song that Owen selected.